The painful reality of all the yards that Ashton Jeanty has earned, and trust me, he's earned in his young career. That plus more on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, September 24th, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making this show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast, or you're checking us out by way of the YouTube page, you know we appreciate both. The show continues to grow each and every day because of your consistent support and the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good each and every day. We shout him out. We appreciate him. He takes on more and more projects each and every day, so we definitely appreciate him. You can find him on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, you know we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line for you, 707-654-4693. As we normally do, we'll close out the show hearing from you, calls, texts, all that good feedback. And trust and believe, we've had plenty of great feedback. We'll do that coming up, segment number 3. Segment number 2, we'll talk about the offensive line and in reality, how this is the first week that there's a chance to have continuity with the offensive line since they've been, playing games since week 1. So they had their starting 5. Looks like they might have their starting 5 again. We're anticipating them have their starting 5 again in week 4. But again, some team that needs to have continuity, a unit that needs to have some continuity and have some, togetherness, they're only going to have that first chance again since week 1. We'll talk about that in segment number 2. Here is segment number 1, news and notes of the day, and we'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So off top, I wanted to give you the reality of what Ashton Jeanty has done in his short career. I know it's only been 3 games. I know he's only but he's only earned 144 yards on the ground. So a lot of folks nationally are talking about Ashton Jeanty. Maybe he's not that guy. Maybe the Raiders made a bad decision when they went and drafted him. When in reality, as I've used that word earned multiple times, that's exactly what he's done on the ground. He's earned every yard he's received. The fact of the matter is he's got 144 total yards, but he's got 146 total yards after contact, right? So that's a lot of heavy lifting. Ian Hartitz on Twitter actually dropped this. He does a lot of analytics and fantasy sports and, drops all the percentages. Percentage of rushing yards to come after contact among all running backs with 100-plus rushing yards this season. Went through a handful of running backs. When he got to Ashton Jeanty, is at 101% of his yards have come after the contact. That should be impossible. But unfortunately for Ashton Jeanty and the Raiders, that's what he's been dealing with. When you talk about he hasn't had a lot of help from the offensive line, he truly has not had very much help from the offensive line. Now, some of that's also on the play calling, so that's going to go back to Chip Kelly, as Lincoln Kennedy pointed out on the Raiders Squad show that we had on Tuesday. It was a fantastic show. Hopefully you're able to check it out. He mentioned the fact that the Raiders line up in the pistol formation so many times, which already puts Ashton Jeanty 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage. So when I went back and said that, 11 of his 17 carries, he was met at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage by a defender, he's already starting 8 yards back. So he's got to gain 8 yards before he can gain 1 yard. So Lincoln's suggestion was maybe not line up in the shotgun so much. Maybe not line up in the pistol. Have Geno Smith get under center, make the angles that the edge rushers are collapsing the pocket, make it a little bit, not quite as a wide angle as they've been doing so far with Geno Smith in the shotgun and, of course, in the pistol formation as well. But the reality is the talent is there. We know that. We've seen him spin. We've seen him pick up 13 yards. We've seen him pick up 16 yards. We've seen him pick up 18 yards at a time. But we've also seen him get hit in the backfield. And a lot of that has to do with the offensive line. Some of it has to do with the play calling. That'll be this week's conversation with Chip Kelly when we get to meet with him later this week. How can your play calling help out Ashton Jeanty? How can your play calling help keep Geno Smith upright and help out the offensive line as they're trying to come together? Think about this. Ashton Jeanty, 101% of his yards have come in after contact, right? Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions, 31% of his yards have come after contact. Think about that difference. Think about how stinking good Ashton Jeanty could be if he was anywhere near that 31% that Jahmyr Gibbs is with the Detroit Lions, who, oh, by the way, have a really good offensive line. right, led by Penei Sewell, who is one of the best offensive linemen in the National Football League. So that's the truth of the matter when it comes to Ashton Jeanty. That's not me trying to make excuses on why he hasn't popped like everyone expected him to, but it's going to take some help from the big dudes up front, the big uglies, as we like to call them, and the play calling from Chip Kelly. Now, the Raiders did bring in a few players to work out on Tuesday, and one you're very familiar with. The Raiders worked out linebacker Luke Masterson and defensive back Shamar Bartholomew per the league's transaction wire. Obviously, Masterson, undrafted free agent out of Wake Forest in 2022, played with the Silver and Black from 2022 to 2024. He's really a special teams ace. And we saw the Raiders special teams get annihilated and look really bad on Sunday against the Washington Commanders. So I can easily see them bringing him in as a guy that can get it done on special teams. This guy played 1 year over 330 special team snaps. Like, that dude gets after it. He makes it happen. So he can be that guy if they do, in fact, decide to go in that direction. It would not surprise me at all. As far as Shamar Bartholomew goes, undrafted free agent cornerback in 2024. He was part of the Jets training camp in 2024. Standout in preseason. He had no receiving yards that he allowed on 9 targets. Was waived on August 29, 2024. Then was claimed off waivers by the Carolina Panthers. And he was actually the guy that was in most demand with the players on waivers, with 4 teams that put in a claim for him. The Carolina Panthers, they received him, but then he was waived on August 26, 2025, and re-signed to the practice squad and released the next day. So those are the 2 players. Those are normally on Tuesdays, the days that you see players come in and work out, not just with the Raiders, but across the league. So Luke Masterson, a guy that Raider Nation is very familiar with, and then Shamar Bartholomew, the cornerback, he came in for a visit as well. As far as the practice schedule goes this week, today we get to meet with head coach Pete Carroll. That'll be around 12:15. We'll also meet with Geno Smith and running back Ashton Jeanty, all in the indoor facility around 12:15. And also the locker room will be open until 1 o'clock. So I'll be able to get in there and do that before my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness at Raider Nation Radio 920 starts at 2 o'clock. So I'll make sure to handle that, get that taken care of, and hopefully bring you some good sound from the Raiders locker room as they prepare for the Chicago Bears. Then on Thursday, 12:15, again, defensive coordinator Patrick Graham, offensive coordinator Chip Kelly. That's when we could start to ask him about, the pistol formation, ask him about shotgun, ask him what he can do to help out Jeanty, help out the offense in general, help out Geno Smith stay upright in that offensive line as they're trying to come together. And then Friday, 12:50, will be when we get to meet with head coach Pete Carroll, 12:50 to 1:35. So I'll be pushing it a little bit. Again, I got to be on the radio by 2. So Pete Carroll at 12:50 in the indoor facility, and locker room will be open till 1:35. So maybe I could push it till about 1:30, then get in the ride and head to Studio Q, where I'm at right now, and get ready for my radio show. So we'll try to make it happen every single day and bring you as much as possible from inside the Raiders locker room. Coming up in segment number 2, when is enough? What am I talking about? The offensive line and the project that they're trying to put together with Colton Miller at the left tackle spot, Dylan Parham at the left guard, Jordan Meredith at the center spot, JBJ, I anticipate him being at the right guard spot, and obviously DJ Glaze at the right tackle spot. I'll explain all that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of the great sponsors we have here on the show, and that is Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS top safety pick and awards than anyone else. That's as of August of 2025. From footwork to breath work, athletes sweat all the details. Well, Mazda, they bring the same intention to how they craft every single model. They can feel, and you'll feel, the Japanese craftsmanship in every single detail. They got the metallic accents, and of course, the Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drive feel like anything but, from smooth handling to great controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you could drive with confidence through almost any season. Right now, like our players and all players, they sweat every detail, right? Because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. I let it be known at the end of segment number 1, a little bit of a tease, as we call it in the business. When is enough when we're talking about the offensive line? When we met with head coach Pete Carroll on Monday, obviously there was a lot of anger amongst Raider Nation about the performance of the offensive line. The whole podcast I did on Monday was really dedicated to the offensive line and really the fact that, hey, what they're doing is not acceptable. Geno Smith got sacked 5 times, was pressured basically all day. Ashton Jeanty never really had any lanes to rush at all. So Pete Carroll was asked about the offensive line and any plans of changing, any kind of major changes or any kind of small changes moving forward. Here's Pete Carroll.
So, Pete, the offensive line, you look at any potential changes, or are you going to go with what you have?
We're working on some stuff. We want to see JPJ come back to action and get back involved. We have to, in all phases of it, we got to get off the football better and make more of the running game. There's not enough happening there to act on the play pass game, and we're just not getting enough. So we just got to keep working it. We got the guys we got, and there's and we need to keep developing and keep building on it.
So would that be competition at the right guard spot or the entire line possibly?
We're working at the right guard spot. Our young guys they'll get their turn sometime, but they're not ready yet. So we have what we have, and we got to make our guys do better, and we got to fit it together better than we have.
So if you recall, that was Pete Carroll from Monday, right? Yeah, they're looking at everything, but the only competition, as I followed up, was really with the right guard spot. So again, I'm anticipating Jackson Powers-Johnson being back into the starting lineup, which will be the same offensive line that they had in Week 1 against the New England Patriots for the first time since that Week 1 game. So this is the first time they're going to have that opportunity to have a little bit of continuity, something that Lincoln Kennedy says this Raiders offensive line needs really badly. They just need to get reps with each other. In training camp, they're out there practicing for sure, but there's not very many padded practices. They're not hitting each other. They're not really doing the kind of blocking where they're really trying to aggressively get the defensive line to the ground and really have their way and put their will on them. They're not practicing like that. That's not reality. If you're thinking about practice, you're thinking about training camp, you're thinking about back in the day when Lincoln played and they had 2-a-days and they had all these different padded practices. Literally, they're limited on padded practices. And during the regular season, and it kind of blew my mind. I've been covering the NFL for a very long time and didn't realize during the regular season, the teams are only allowed 14 padded practices. Now, I know other teams make it work. Philadelphia has a fantastic offensive line. Detroit, fantastic offensive line. Baltimore, really good offensive line, right? Green Bay, they do their thing. There's plenty of teams that have really good offensive lines, and they still have the same rules that the Raiders have to go by, but it just blows my mind that you have a 17-game season, and you're only allowed at 14 padded practice throughout the course of that season. And the first 11 have to be taken care of by week 14. So you're only allowed 11 in the first 14 weeks, and then you can have 3 more padded practice. And that, to me, is not enough. Lincoln laughs when he hears that number because that's just not how it was when he played. But with that being said, and that knowledge of what Pete Carroll said about the changes at the offensive line, and it sounds like it's only going to be the right guard spot, I had Justin Mello on my radio show on Monday when I was out at Silver Sevens Hotel and Casino here in Vegas. I had him on. He has an article out on draftnetwork.com talking about the real issues behind Ashton Jeanty's struggles, which is really good, and obviously all roads lead back to the offensive line. So I asked him the question of, okay, hey, if this isn't working, do you anticipate the Raiders making a change along that offensive line, even possibly going back to what it was last year when they had the same 5 guys out there? They just were in different positions. Meredith was the left guard, JPJ was the center, and Dylan Parham was the right guard. Here's Justin Mello.
It's not an easy situation to be in. The way that I see it, if you have decided Jordan Meredith is better at center, and in my opinion, that's exactly what Pete Carroll has decided here, how do you go back and move him to guard now?
Right.
That's a philosophical decision, right? We don't think he has the length to play guard. We don't think he's got the anchor, the power required to play guard. That's you're on the toilet or you're not, right? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They feel he's a center. That's the evaluation. That's how they evaluated the player. And Alex Kappa's not playing well right now. So if you move Jackson Powers-Johnson back to center, what are you doing? You're going against your own word and you're putting Meredith back at guard, or you're keeping Kappa in the lineup at guard. I don't necessarily see how that second scenario works. Now, I would like to see them try what I had just said, the reversal of last year, of having JPJ there at center and maybe Meredith at guard. I thought that's when that unit played their best football in 2024. But they clearly don't believe that Meredith is a guard. And because this unit, this starting 5, has only had the one opportunity together due to the injury to JPJ, I think they're going to keep riding this thing out and put the initial 5 back on the field in week 4 and see if this thing can get pointed in the right direction.
So he doesn't anticipate any changes coming soon. So the question I had, and I talked about it on my radio show on Tuesday on Raider Nation Radio 920, is if not now, when? And that question was posed to us on the Raider Squad show as well with Chantel Chan, Lincoln Kennedy, and myself. And Lincoln feels like they're going to probably ride out this offensive line as long as JPJ is healthy and available, and that's always a big if, right? Because you just don't know. And that was something Lincoln pointed out as well. Everyone's screaming for JPJ to be center and JPJ to be whatever. And he said, I don't care where he plays. I just want him to be available. And there's no guarantee he will because he has the head issues, the concussion issues, right? That has followed him ever since college. So there's no telling if he's going to be 100% healthy and be 100% available even through the bye week. So Lincoln said if they're going to make some changes, they'll probably wait for the bye week when they have a little bit extra time. Now, if you look at the schedule, the bye week follows game number 7 and week number 7 against the Kansas City Chiefs. So, look, this is going to be the second game coming up on Sunday. If, in fact, JPJ has entered back into, the starting lineup, this will only be the second time that they've actually played together as a starting offensive line. So I'm willing to give them some time. I feel like, 7 weeks may be a little bit of extra time. It may feel like things are slipping away if we see more of the same. But at the same time, when Lincoln brings up they need extra time to get the guys together if they're going to make a change, it makes sense. I mean, how many times do we see coaches get fired in the bye week? How many times do we see quarterbacks, one gets benched and another one comes to become a starter in the bye week? Like a lot of times, if your team as a team going to make a change, it'll probably be in the bye week. So that feels like that's about the right time. But if it gets off the rails, then all bets are off. Right, if it continues to get really bad and Gino's getting sacked 4 or 5 times a game and Ashton's getting hit in the backfield before he ever gets going, then I could see them making some changes. And I don't know if they'd be willing to go back to what the offensive line was last year because, as Justin Mello pointed out, somebody identified Jordan Meredith as not a strong enough left guard, and he has to be the center, right, because he has the shorter arms and he has the lighter base. Right, so he doesn't have the power, he doesn't have the reach to be at the guard position, even though he did well at that spot last year. I don't know if this coaching staff will have the want to say, hey, you know what? We were wrong. Maybe we should just go back to what it was last year. I'm not saying that they won't, but I don't know if they will, right? Obviously, they haven't been around long enough. I don't know them well enough to be like, yeah, they're not going to change anything up. They're going to stick to their guns. I don't know that. So I'm not going to say that. And I know there's a website out there that's going to write something that I said and say, oh, so a radio host said this or Q said this on the podcast. No, look, again, I don't know any of that. I'm saying I don't know if they'd be willing to make that change. I would like to see them, if this doesn't work, if this version of the offensive line does not work, I would love to see them go back to what they did last year and take a shot and see if it goes, right? Because at least we have visual, physical, video evidence of it working a year ago, right? And I know Ashton Jeanty was not the running back. Geno Smith was not the quarterback. I get that. There's definitely some new parts added to the mix, but we saw the offensive line actually work and look pretty good towards the end of the season, which it obviously looked better than it looks right now. So if they're going to make a change, I'd like to see them make a change back, revert back to what it was last year. Look, sometimes, and I've been guilty of this plenty of times, sometimes you have an idea, sometimes you have all the great reasons and it makes sense to you, it sounds fantastic, why something's going to work and why you need to do something this way. And then when you actually go out there and execute it, you're like, yeah, you know what? My bad. That was not a good decision. I don't mind if they come back and say, you know what? We decided that this was the wrong call. Even AP said it at the end of the year. Hey, hindsight being 2020, probably should have started Aiden O'Connell as over Gardner Minshew. Now, I know it was way too late when that decision was made, and when Aiden got in, he got injured immediately, and Gardner had to come back in, and before, so we all know how that song and dance went. But sometimes you just have to admit that what you had, the plan that you had, and the way that you thought you were going to execute it is not going to work. Again, I don't know if that's going to be the case for this, but for many people that ask, hey, when is change coming if this is not going to work out, if this is not going to pan out? Like years ago with Josh McDaniels, they never had the same offensive line the first 5-6 weeks of the season. Remember, it felt like a month and a half before they settled in on a starting 5, and that was frustrating. At least they identified an offensive line of a starting 5 they felt comfortable with. Now can they go out there and actually, in regular season play when it matters, go out there and reward their confidence in them by playing at a high level? Look, the reality of it is, and I think Raider Nation, you would agree with me 100%, 10 toes down on this one. If the Raiders take on the Bears in Allegiant Stadium on Sunday and they end the first quarter of the season 2-2, I think everyone would take that and be happy about it. Have a big smile on their face. We'd be talking about it, handing out game balls on Monday. Everyone happy that through 4 games, the Raiders are sitting there right in the thick of things at 2-2. The good thing is the Chargers 3-0 in the division, and the rest of the division is 1-2. So it's not like they're getting blown out. It's not like they haven't won a game yet and they're sitting there, in last place and don't have a chance. They're right there in the thick of things. So if they can go and handle their business, and obviously they're turning the page to the Washington Commanders, we'll be at practice today to talk to them about it. You go get that win over the Bears on Sunday at Allegiant Stadium. Now you're 2-2. You're not going to have the same crowd that you had Monday Night Football against the Chargers. All anticipation is about a 50-50 crowd on Sunday, Bears and Raider fans. You expect that. Bears fans travel well. There's a lot of Bears fans here in Las Vegas. Matter of fact, there's some Bears restaurants, some pizza spots here in Vegas. And matter of fact, I think William the Refrigerator Perry and some other Jim McMahon and other old-time Chicago Bears that won a Super Bowl are going to be here doing some autograph signings and be at Allegiant Stadium. And, they're bringing the whole crew. So it's going to be about 50-50 crowd. But in the end of the day, if the Raiders just handle their business, don't worry about the outside noise, don't worry about what everyone says they can't do, and just go out there and do what they can do, get a dub, nobody's worried about the way that they got beat down in Washington. Everyone's doing backflips because they're 2-2. And look, I said I thought that the Raiders would be at 4 wins by the time they hit their bye week following that Game 7 against the Chiefs. I don't care how they get to those 4 wins. Just get there. If they can get there, they're right on track to be in a really good position in late November, early December, with potentially 8-9 wins, and maybe they're fighting for a playoff spot. That's the reality of it. So they've got to get right, and they've got to get right on Sunday versus Chicago Bears. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts, 707-654-4693. We'll hear from you as we close out the show. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. The NFL season's here. FanDuel's making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Folks love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building the same game parlay, even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It does not matter. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sundays, to your Mondays, to your Thursdays, and if you want to get freaky and go into the college game, to your Fridays and your Saturdays. So are you ready to play? Of course you are. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with a text from LA Raiders Steve. It's a quick one. It says, "Hey, Q, answer me a question. What are OTAs, minicamp, and training camp for? We're going into week 4, and all I'm hearing about the line is more reps, more snaps to get this right. No disrespect to Lincoln Kennedy. He's one of my all-time favorites, but he was one of the loudest of all of them. When is it going to be enough snaps, enough reps? Week 5, 6, and 7? Come on, man. LA Raiders Steve." And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about in segment number 2, right? Goes back to the same conversation. When is enough, right? And this is only, in reality, LA Raiders Steve, Lincoln's not wrong. This is only the second game, if JPJ is actually in the starting lineup, that the starting 5 are going to be playing together. Only the second game. I know it's week 4, but that's a availability problem. That wasn't these guys pulled JPJ out of the game and didn't want him to play, and so they mixed it up on their own. They weren't comfortable with the starting 5. No, JPJ wasn't available, right? He got injured literally in practice. He didn't get injured in game number 1 against the Patriots. He got injured in practice. He got a concussion in practice leading into week 2 against the Chargers. And then on a short week, Pete Carroll, his explanation, not mine, said we did not put him back out there. It was a short week, and we didn't hit. So I wanted to make sure that we got some hitting in and got a full week of practice in before we actually put him out there. Again, they're being sensitive to the concussion history that he has. So you're not wrong, right? More reps is needed. So Lincoln's right. I guess 2 people could be right at the same time. Lincoln's right that they do need more reps, but at some point they're going to have to make a decision, like I said. And as Lincoln pointed out, it probably won't happen till the bye week if it's going to happen at all. LA Raider Steve, thanks so much for the text. Definitely appreciate you. Raider Jim in the Pacific Northwest, he's calling in to talk about the offensive line, the way they played on Sunday, and gave some insight into the O-lines that Pete Carroll had in Seattle. Here's Raider Jim in the Pacific Northwest.
Hey, Q. This is Raider Jim from the Pacific Northwest. Watching the silver and black on Sunday was just atrocious. I mean, the Raiders O-line was simply abysmal. I mean, just like Lincoln Kennedy has stated, we need to get more physical, but instead, we were just inept. So I trust this call will convey a bit of insight for you and your audience. You know, up here in Seattle, with all the Seahawks baloney, you'll know this isn't exactly shocking under Pete Carroll. Yes, he had some decent offensive lines when the Seahawks made it to those to those 2 Super Bowl runs. I mean, there was like guys like Russell Okung and Max Unger. I mean, they held it together in 2013, 2014 for that team. You know, but outside that window, Carroll and John Schneider consistently underinvested in the trenches. I mean, I don't know whether that's an NFL thing or not, but I don't think so. Anyway, the results speak for themselves. 51 sacks for the Seahawks back then in 2018, 48 in 2020, 46 in both 2021 and 2022. I mean, even so-called good years under 2013 when they were the Super Bowl champs, they still gave up 44 sacks. I mean, that was in the bottom third of the league. You know, over his 9 years as a starter, Russell Wilson was sacked nearly 400 times. That's an insane number. Okay, so now compare that to freaking Harbaugh. What's Harbaugh doing? I mean, crazy, man. He invested in his O-line to protect that, you know. Oh, I'm just so frustrated, Q. You know what I'm saying, and you know what my audience is saying, but you know what? I'm just so upset.
Raider Jim, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And, yeah, that's something I do recall. There's no doubt. There's no denying that. I remember that, man. Been covering the league a long time. I remember the offensive lines in Seattle were not very good, right? And it's funny because even though they weren't great, they still ended up being productive at somehow, some way. Like at the end of the season, you look up and you're like, oh, yeah, hey, the Seahawks have this top rushing attack. It's like, what? How are they top 10 and their offensive line is not very good? They invested some capital. They'd go and draft guys. They go and spend some free agency money. I never thought that Tom Cable was that great as the offensive line coach up in Seattle. They just seemed to me, again, this is from the outside looking in, you probably know better because you're there and you lived it, just never felt like that offensive line was very good. That was one of my big critiques of that team all the time. So, yeah, you're not wrong. This is definitely something that has followed Pete Carroll for a while in Seattle. I heard Robert Turbin, he was on JT the Bricks Mad Dog radio show, and he said something about Pete Carroll. He said the last years that he was there, this kind of offensive line struggles and issues were really, they reared their ugly head with Pete Carroll. That was part of the problem. That was a big problem with Pete Carroll in Seattle the last few years. The offensive line was brother can't get right, and nobody wants to be brother can't get right for obvious reasons. So thanks so much for that call. Definitely appreciate you. Got a text from my guy, Johnny Raider. Says, hey, Q, Johnny Raider called in earlier. I have more to say. Yeah, we're going to get crushed every game if we don't change the line. This coaching staff is dumb, man, and I'm shocked. Dylan Parham has always sucked at left guard. Played respectably at right guard last year. What'd they do? Switch him back to right guard. JPJ played poorly at guard last year. Good at center. What'd they do? Move him back to guard. Now they have him on the bench when he's healthy for some dumb reason. Jordan Meredith played good at left guard last year. What'd they do? Put him at center. I'm dumbfounded, bro. And I doubt they'll change it back and admit they are wrong. I really do. Feels like they have beef with JPJ for whatever reason. I don't know, man. I don't know. That's from Johnny Raider. And look, I'm not going to say that they're dumb. I feel like that they had an idea. I think Justin Mello kind of described it best in segment number 2 when he said, look, they identified Jordan Meredith as a guy that they didn't feel confident at the guard position because of his arm length and because of his base. Now, to your point, he was good as a left guard last year. We were singing his praises like, man, we didn't expect this guy to be this guy, but he is. Dylan Parham was good at the right guard spot, and JPJ, once he switched over to the center spot, was good. I thought he was pretty good at the left guard spot for the most part. A few times he got out of whack, but the right guard spot is probably the one position he's not that comfortable with as far as I'm concerned. So, like we said in segment number 2, I think change is needed. If, in fact, this is not going to work, they have to be willing to admit that they were wrong. Right? They've got to put their egos to the side. And I'm not saying that they will, but they have to put their egos to the side and just at some point just say, hey, man, that was my fault. My bad. What I saw on film and what I thought made sense for what we're trying to do is not working. It does feel like it's personal with JPJ, even though I don't know that to be true. So, I'm not going to sit there and say that it is or it isn't. Again, there's a website that's going to write every single thing that I say and everything that JT says and everything that they hear Raiders related. They will never put their name on it, but they'll tell you, swear up and down what we said. Trust and believe it's out there. I've had people send it to me like, yeah, Q, hey, this is what you said. Yeah, that's what they say I said. So I want to be very careful and make sure that it's not twisted. I don't know it to be personal with JPJ, but at some point, just from the naked eye, from the outside looking in, it feels like it, to your point. Johnny Raider, thanks so much for the text. Definitely appreciate it. We'll close out with a call from Woody in Spokane. Man, this has been the Pacific Northwest Day, right? We had Raider Jim, and now we got Woody. He's calling to talk about this year's draft as opposed to last year's draft. A little frustrated from the lack of production from this year's draft class. Here he is, Woody in Spokane.
Hey, Q. Hey, this is Woody up in Spokane, man. I just wanted to tell you I love the show. Thank you and Ari. And I also like the guys you have calling in and the girl. I appreciate all you guys. Man, I just want to call in and say I really look at our offensive line. And, when Pete was up in Seattle, he didn't have a good offensive line. They even had a couple of first-round draft picks they put toward that line. I don't even think they're in the league anymore, which kind of scares me. And, you look at last year's draft, for the first 3 rounds, Glaze, JPJ, Bowers, all starters. This year, I look at our draft, and Jeanty, he's a starter. That guy can play if he can get, any kind of hole. And our second round, Besh, I don't even see that guy around half the time. I don't know about our draft, man. I think it's time we started asking a couple of questions because we had 3 third-round picks, and I don't see one of them on the field, ever. Hardly ever. And a little frustrating. Anyway, that's all I got, man. I just want to make it quick, and I appreciate you. Take care, everybody, and go Raiders.
Woody, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you, my man. Yeah, look, Bowers, JPJ, DJ Glaze, they all got a lot of burn their rookie year, right? First, second, and third round picks. DeCam Richardson, the 4th round pick, he got a lot of burn going in for Jacorian Bennett. He didn't play very well, but he got a lot of great reps under his belt, and he came back in training camp and looked pretty good. Hasn't done too much after training camp, even in the preseason. Didn't look very good. So this year, Jeanty, obviously, he's going to get a lot of attention, get a lot of burn. Besh has been out there, even though he's only had a couple targets. He has been out there. Dante Thornton Jr., obviously, he's the guy that everyone looks to because he's a big playmaker, as we saw week 1 against New England. But he's only had a few catches as well, few targets. Darian Porter, the 3rd-round pick, cornerback out of Iowa State. He's had more reps on special teams. He will get his opportunity when it comes to being a cornerback. I mean, you saw him come in late in the game against the Commanders on Sunday. He's going to get some burn. Caillou Blue Kelly earned that spot. That's why he's starting ahead of him. But if he starts to slip, trust and believe he'll be in the game sooner rather than later. Cody Lindenberg, he's been a guy that's been getting some reps in special teams as well. The dudes in the trenches, right? J.J. Pequise, Tonka Hemingway, they haven't got any burn. Charles Grant, he hasn't got any burn. Caleb Rogers. Grant really is, I think, a no-go all year. He's coming from William & Mary. I think this is going to be a redshirt year for him. He's going to learn the NFL game, see what fits him best, and then they're going to try to slide him into the offensive line sometime next year. So to John Spytek's credit, he did draft 2 offensive linemen, but they haven't got any burn yet. Caleb Rogers, I don't know if he'll start at some point throughout the maybe second half of the season, but clearly he's not ready, as Pete Carroll said that to me when I asked about competition on the offensive line. The young guys are going to get their turn. They're going to get their chance. That's what he said. His words, not mine. But they're not ready yet. So, again, coaches coach, players play, right? My pops hit me up on Tuesday and sent me the text. Coaches coach, players play. So, if Lincoln says it and my pops is saying it, well, it's got to be true. It's got to be true, especially when Pop says it. I'm definitely not going against what he said. He's told me so many things that were true that I had no idea what he was talking about when I was young, and everything is crystal clear now as a much older Q. So Pop's always got to thank him. Of course, thank Moms, too, for all the wise knowledge that she dropped on me. But Pops always drops the gems, and I appreciate him for that. So that's all we got time for on today's show. I got a text from Renee that we'll get to. I got more calls as well that we'll get to. Tomorrow we will have the crossover edition, so it'll be all things Bears, all things Raiders. You know how we do. Thursday show, and then Friday we'll, of course, hit you with, keys to victory for the Silver and Black. What do they have to do to beat the Bears? We'll get back to your calls and texts. We'll get back to news and notes, and get ready. We'll also have locker room sound as well. We'll get ready for Sunday's game at Allegiant Stadium. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.